All right. Well, we have a packed agenda, so we're going to get started. My name's Rebecca Wallach. I'm the director of the Evelyn Frank Legal Resources Program. I'm joined today by two great colleagues, Kelly Ann Murray, a supervising attorney with us, and Rachel Holtzman, a policy consultant. We have, and we're going to focus on best practices for Medicaid renewals at HRA, pointing out where we can, practices for the rest of the state. And let's get started. We all work with the New York Legal Assistance Group. We're a nonprofit that provides free legal services to low-income New Yorkers. Our unit, the Evelyn Frank Legal Resources Program, is focused on healthcare advocacy, making sure that older adults and people with disabilities have access to healthcare that's affordable, that meets their needs. And we have a strong practice in long-term care. And we meet this mission in a variety of ways, whether it's counseling, direct representation, trainings like this one, and advocacy policy work. We also, in conjunction with sister organizations, a very helpful website, nyhealthaccess.org or health.wnylc.com/health. Encourage everybody to reach out and check out this website, because we do our best, although it's a labor of love, to keep the state updated with all things going on with the Medicaid program that is changing at a rapid pace right now. So we're going to try in this hour and a half, you can tell from my quick pace that there's a lot to get through, to go over the following: where we are now after the last 5 years that were quite novel, do some table setting to make sure we all know what we're talking about when it comes to Medicaid renewals, then jump into best practices with the renewal packet, what to do if your client receives a notice of intent to discontinue their Medicaid case, and how to properly review an approval notice, hoping that your clients get that far in the process. And then at the very end, we're going to talk about a new program that the state is rolling out that's going to bring applications and renewals online for a portion of older adults and people with disabilities. It's called MECN. Okay, so with that, where we are now after the public health emergency and the unwind. If you can remember, we've been through quite a bit in the last 5 years as city and with our as individuals and with our Medicaid program. When the public health emergency was declared with the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw something that many of us had never seen before, which is that Medicaid cases could not be closed. And this was because the federal government directed the states to have healthcare coverage for New Yorkers who were eligible for Medicaid, and to keep that Medicaid going while they would need it during the pandemic. And the pandemic, if we can remember, stretched on and on. Eventually, the federal government weighed in on how we were going to bring Medicaid renewals back online, and this started the unwind process. States had an opportunity to choose a number of easements, which are called E14 waivers, to make the renewal process easier and to keep people covered. And where we are now, it's over mostly. So so here we are. Our state had 10 E14 waivers. And as of today, October 15th, 2025, these ex parte and auto renewals as part of the unwind, they're gone. The MCO and enrollment broker outreach E14 easements, over. For a period of time, we had a waiver of the resource test for non-MAGI recipients. That's done. You must be resource eligible to continue to be Medicaid eligible. So what do we have left? 9 and 10. 9, and I'm going to do, this was a waiver, or an E14 waiver, that applied to people, Medicaid beneficiaries who were on the New York State of Health, so they just had Medicaid. And during the pandemic or the unwind, they became dual eligibles. they turned 65 and got Medicare, or they had Social Security disability for 24 months and they got Medicare. Instead of those cases moving to the local departments of social services during the unwind, they stayed on the New York State of Health and were reevaluated using just their income limits. And so that is over, but there's more to the story. It has to do with MECM. And then number 10, the last one, this is the last E14 waiver that's in effect. And we have special fair hearing protections, and we'll get into this later in our presentation, through December 31st, 2025. So just a few more months on this waiver, but it's an important one. It allows, and it gives all of our clients more protection if their cases close to access aid to continue. And we should really be proud of our state. The fact that our Department of Health opted into so many waivers really made it so that we were one of the leading states keeping families and children enrolled. And a lot of these waivers made a huge difference for younger Medicaid beneficiaries who received their Medicaid services through the New York State of Health. Now, I've circled this is a press release from the New York State of Health, from our Department of Health, and I just circled the date there, December 20th, 2023. So we were on track, doing a great job as the unwind was unwinding, but we had a special rule in New York City and in certain DSSs, Departments of Social Services throughout the state, in which cases couldn't close even at this time, during this time period, even if the consumer did not return their Medicaid renewal packet or they failed to recertify. So we had a pause actually for about 5 years at HRA and at certain DSSs across the state in which cases did not close for failure to recertify. And that pause ended in April of 2025, just about 6 months ago. This was an amazing protection for our clients. And we know that these types of discontinuances to failure to recertify are also called procedural discontinuances. It's not that the consumer, most of the time, it's not that the consumer is no longer financially eligible for Medicaid. It's that the consumer's case would close because they failed to comply with an administrative requirement to keep their eligibility active. And so this is also called churn when cases close for failure to recertify. It's churn, and it has serious consequences for our clients because they cannot access healthcare when their cases are closed. And it has consequences for HRA or the DSS because they often have to bring in they have to put in new resources for when renewals come in late or new applications come in. So we really want to push to stop this kind of churn. And the reason we're having this webinar, one of the reasons, is to make sure that we're all using best practices to keep the coverage open and active for our clients. And where are we about 6 months later now that this pause is over and discontinuances are back on track? We know that in New York City, about 20,000 Medicaid cases are closing every month because clients or the systems are not registering that renewals were submitted. And these clients are receiving notices, or they should be receiving notices, that their cases are going to close. And these notices have fair hearing rights. And we do know that the fair hearing requests in New York City for failure to recertify are increasing. The numbers, the rest of state, I'm a little bit less familiar with, but as the pause was lifted in April, we do know that the trend is the same. The numbers are slightly smaller just because of population side, where there are more cases closing upstate for failure to recertify and more fair hearings being requested. So that's a little review of the history of how we find ourselves where we are now. But we want to move now into sort of the practical aspects of this webinar. And so let's make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to what renewal paperwork looks like and what the basic procedure is for the renewal paperwork. So when I'm talking about Medicaid renewals in New York City, I'm talking about this renewal notification form, the MAP 909 little e big E. You'll see that there's a notice date, and this one it's dated February 8th, 2025. And in the first paragraph, it tells you the deadline by which the renewal is due. So here it was dated February 8th, and it's due April 10th. This was the first cohort subject to the discontinuance. And you see we already have a tip. Turn this in at least 2 weeks in advance if possible. So that's the form we're talking about, getting it in on time and making sure, hoping that it's processed on time so that the case stays open and active. And this is the form in New York City. In the rest of the state, the Medicaid renewal looks more like this. So this one is an example from Erie County. It's what we call a CNS notice. It's very long, but the first page has the notice date, the top, which is circled. And the second page, so here it was May 20, 2025. And the second page tells you the deadline by which you must return the renewal. Here it was June 9th, so just about 30 days to respond, or actually more like 20 days. It should have been more. And it tells you the address where it is required. And so making sure that this renewal gets in back to the DSS on time when you're in the rest of the state is the purpose of this presentation. So going through just how we think the process should work right here, I'm going to go through step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go through what may actually be happening for our clients. So in the New York State, or New York City, the client receives a Medicaid renewal in the mail. It's due in about 45 days until usually around the 10th of the month. And then best case scenario, the consumer completes the renewal on time, follows all of our best practices. So there's not going to be a problem. And step 3, the renewal gets to HRA's vendor, which is called Vanguard. They receive the renewal before the deadline and they send it to HRA. And HRA's workflow stops the procedural discontinuance, stops the notice of intent to discontinue from being issued. And then step 4, the HRA worker reviews the renewal, redetermines the case, puts coverage up for another 12 months, and uses the correct budgeting. But here are some of the pitfalls I think all of us on this webinar have frequently seen. So with step 1, the consumer never receives the renewal packet in the mail. Step 2, even though the consumer received the renewal packet, the consumer doesn't respond in time. And so then they get the notice of discontinuance or doesn't respond at all. Or step 2, the consumer responds to the renewal after the deadline and still receives a discontinuation notice. And we're going to talk about what to do in all of these scenarios or possibly how to prevent them. Step 3, we assume that there are problems with the mail renewals or not being processed by Vanguard or HRA in a timely manner to stop the NOI from being issued. There could be problems with Access HRA processing a renewal. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry, we're going to get into it. Or a common pattern that we do see is that even though HRA received the renewal and it was sent over into the system, they failed to act on that timely received renewal and the case lapses, which means that there's no coverage, even though the renewal paperwork is with HRA. And we'll talk about what to do in that scenario as well. Let's say we get to step 4 and we have, what are some of the problems we see at this point? We do see that Medicaid cases could be incorrectly budgeted, and we'll talk about this as well. That coverage isn't put up for 12 months, or the consumer's Medicaid case is closed because they are the worker at HRA finds they're no longer eligible. So I hope that kind of gets us basically onto the same page, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Kelly to really get into the best practices on the renewal.
Sorry. So I'm gonna just go through our tips on how to complete a renewal. Our tips are based on our experiences of any of those pitfalls that Rebecca has gone through listing all the issues that could occur, hoping that we avoid those pitfalls and everything goes as smoothly as possible. Next slide. So, some of you in New York City will recognize that the cover sheet has changed. It is reminding all recipients that a Medicaid renewal must be completed. They must act now. This is just reminding them that we went through 5 years of not having to do that without jeopardizing your coverage. And we want everybody to know that if you do not complete the renewal now, your case will be discontinued. Next slide. An actual renewal notification, the majority of the individuals in New York City will receive the MAP 909E. Just so you know, some people might be getting, if it's just MSP, only a different type of renewal, or you might be getting other types of renewals. Our best tip is if HRA is requesting for you to complete a form, regardless of whether it's a MAP 909 or any other number, you complete it and you complete it as quickly as possible and you return it before the due date. The further out from the due date you have, the best possibility of the paperwork being properly scanned and put into the system. If you're too close to the due date, then they may receive it, but it's not uploaded in time to prevent from getting a notice of discontinuation. Once again, it will tell you the location of where your case is, the notice date, along with the due date. If it comes with an envelope that has a postmark on it, please keep a copy of that postmark if there's some timing issues. Next slide. So the deadline, as I said, all forms from HRA or the local Department of Social Services has a deadline. It needs to be completed before that. We know the closer you are to that due date, the possibility that it will not be scanned or uploaded in time to prevent a notice of discontinuance due to a process or a failure of receiving the documents. So you get a renewal today. Best practice, if possible, you return it, you put it in the mail by tomorrow. Now, I know that's not necessarily a possibility for 100% of the cases, but the quicker it goes out, the better possibility of HRA uploading and scanning it in a timely manner. Next slide. So when you get the renewal, we recommend that you provide the worker with some reminders about the beneficiary's case. Do they have home care? Are they in Medicaid and the Medicare savings program? Are we using a special type of budgeting? Do we have home care through CASA? Do we have home care through an MLTC? Are we using a pool trust? Or we have any type of special budgeting that would be necessary? This is a red flag to the worker that says, oh, look at this. I need to remember these special rules in regards to this particular case. Next slide. So on the MAP form in regards to the renewal, they will ask a question in regards to your Medicare health insurance. If the individual wants to keep their Medicare savings program benefit, we recommend that you do put a note to the worker so they remember not to include the Part B premium in the actual deduction or on the case. This should enable them to continue to keep their Medicare savings program benefit along with a determination of Medicaid. Next slide. In addition, we recommend that you leave notes not only on page 1 of the cover sheet, that you would put a note in regards to income and resources. If an individual is married, both spouses' income needs to be put on the actual paperwork. However, if the person is using a spousal refusal or spousal impoverishment, then you would put a note with a star explaining why this not should be disregarded. So the individual meets the requirement of putting the income of everybody in the household in there, but reminds the worker that, hey, here it is, but you're here. You shouldn't include it in my budget and my determination. In addition, if the person's in the Medicaid buy-in program, you want to make sure that when next to the earned income, you put a star and you remind them that you want to have the increased income guideline based on that particular program. A housing allowance, you want to be able to include information. I was discharged from a nursing home into an MLTC plan and I'm entitled to this. And then if you have other budget, special budgets such as a DAC or a Holocaust reparations, you want to make sure that they remember to disregard certain income within the budget calculation. Next slide. If you are a household size of two, both spouses need to sign the application or the renewal, even if they're doing a spousal refusal. In addition, when you get your packet, the 909 usually comes with about 25 or 26 pages. The first 10 pages are the actual renewal. Page 10 or 11 are the authorization for verification of resources. That particular form needs to be included with the renewal, and both the beneficiary and their spouse need to complete it. That's giving the city the authorization to do a data check in regards to your assets. Next slide. So when completing the renewal, you are required to provide certain documents. At this point, I recommend that you include all documents that you think are necessary or needed or would have been included with the actual new application, only because it has been 5 years for many of these cases to be renewed. And just in case HRA or the local Department of Social Services can't find the documents that they've uploaded and put into the account, you're providing them with these necessary documents so that the case is not deferred for a request for additional documentations. So you're eliminating the possibility of items being lost in the mail. So you're gonna want to do all your proof of your income. Each source of income should have some kind of document that is related to it, your proof of your resources, unless you're only renewing for the Medicare Savings Program. Resources including any bank accounts, life insurance, investment accounts, proof of any health insurance premiums, just because you provided that with them last year. You're going to need to do that again. That would include your Medigap if you're paying any employer or retiree premiums. If you have dental or vision or long-term care, put it all in. That gets you those deductions to make you income eligible. If an individual has a pooled trust, the pooled trust we recommend that you put in the verification of deposits for the past 12 months. It is possible that they may request additional documentations, but you do need to at least include the last 12 months. Now I know. Next page. If anyone who has a special budget, which I went through earlier when you're writing your notes, like I want spousal refusal, I need spousal impoverishment, I want a housing allowance, there are specific forms in New York City that needs to go with the renewal, and we provided you with links to that, or you can go onto our website, go into Medicaid eligibility, and that will get you to the special forms. Just note, if there is a special budget, we recommend that you not only make a note of it on the cover sheet of the renewal packet, we recommend that you write a cover letter. And with the cover letter, you explain what budget and then you provide them with a mock budget of what you think the individual's Medicaid eligibility budget would look like, and hopefully they match it up. Next slide. So you have the packet, you have all those documents that I recommended that you return the packet with, and these are our two best ways to submit. The first one is mailing it in the business reply envelope that came with the packet. I understand that envelope is not very big. We've learned that if your documents are really bulky, if you don't fold as one big bunch, but in little bunches, it's easier to get into that business reply envelope. All of New York City's Medicaid renewals need to be sent to that address, and only that address. Our other option is you can do Access HRA, which is HRA's online portal and app. We recommend that you avoid hand delivering it to the local Medicaid offices. We have heard that some Medicaid offices may be uploading it, and then the main office can't find the uploads or not uploading it. So we recommend that you do not do that. However, if the individual feels that they need to hand deliver it, we recommend that you go in with a second copy and you request for the worker to date stamp the receipt of those documents for your files. Next slide. So here's our best practice for submission. I will admit we are paranoid. However, when you're submitting the document, not only are you submitting it with your fingers crossed, hoping that it's going to be processed correctly, you're also starting to build your case just in case it's not processed correctly, and you need to see if you can resolve the issue via a fair hearing. So with your renewal packet, you're going to have your original plus the supporting documents, and then you'll make yourself 2 copies. The original will go in the business reply envelope. It's usually gray in New York City. However, I have seen blue ones, so I don't know if they're printing different types of applications in different colors. So if you get a business reply envelope from HRA with your packet, that's the one you mail it in. It might not necessarily be gray. Then you have 1 copy. That copy, we recommend that you return receipt requested, mailing it to the same exact address that the business reply envelope is. That would go through the United States Postal Service. And then the next copy will be your file copy. On that file copy, you're going to make a note of where you mailed your business reply envelope. So my notes would say, I walked the business reply envelope to the Hanover Square Hanover Square post office. I went to the window and I handed that to the post office worker on October 1st at 3 p.m. Then I would have a note in regards to how I mailed something, return receipt requested. I will have a copy of the receipt from the post office, along with the green copy that is stamped by the post office and the green postcard that they have when it is received by HRA will be signed. I will keep all of those together. So if for some reason we get a discontinuance notice stating we did not return the envelopes, we have notes in which we can relay to the judge exactly how we mailed it, along with a copy of the receipt and the return. That's just our credibility that when we do go to the fair hearing, we're not just saying to the judge, yeah, I mailed it. I mailed it and here's how I mailed it. That way it will sound more credible. Next slide. In addition to mailing it, individuals in New York City have a option to submit via Access HRA. So if the individual has an Access HRA account, they can go to this website and they could log in and renew based on their account. If they don't have an account, they can go in and actually open up an account. It is quite easy, and they'll be able to submit a renewal via this website. Next slide. You're just going to go through and it goes step by step answering questions. Once you've gone into your account, you'll click on renew and then you'll answer your questions. The website will provide you a summary of the answers that you've put in. If you answered incorrectly, you can edit as necessary. You'll then electronically sign and then submit the responses. Once you've done that, you will get a confirmation. You want to save your confirmation. We also recommend that you print the screen of the review of the summary of your answers. Once you've done that, you're not finished. You have to go to step 2, and that would be accessing the HRA mobile app via your phone. Next slide. Once you've gotten, so this would be your confirmation number that says you've done part 1, of course, print it out, and then it's going to tell you what documents they need you to submit. Once again, you need to go on your phone to the app. That is the only way that you can upload the documents. You'll go in and you'll upload those documents. If you have documents that you need that they're not asking for, you can certainly add them to the other categories that are put in. That would be any special forms they may not necessarily request. Next slide. What will happen is this is what you're looking at, your dashboard. You hit upload, and then you'll just be uploading the documents. Next slide. Then once you're finished with uploading, you'll get the option to do a summary and a cover sheet. I meant a summary for your Medicaid. You can also do this for SNAP. We recommend that you print it once again and you keep a copy of all those documents so that if for some reason they say that they have not received your renewal, you have all your proof. You also want to keep notes of how you did it, when you did it, and the time in which you did it. Next slide. So you've submitted all your documents, you submitted it 4 weeks before, and then you sit and you wait. And you wait and you wait and you start to panic because you have no idea what's going on. You know that it's gone into HRA, you know how many applications that they're getting on a time, and you're panicking. So you can check your status of renewal by, next slide. You could do it through your Access HRA, or you can go by phone. They have an automated line. The automated line sometimes sounds very scary when it comes to privacy matters, but as long as you have authority the person can do it on their own, or if you have authorization from the client to speak to HRA on their behalf, you can do it. It's automated. It's 1-888-692-6116. Next slide. You're just going to listen to the prompts. You're going to select your language. You'll put 2 for your Medicaid menu. Then you'll put 1 to your information about your case. And then you're going to follow your information, to enter your information. You either need to have your case number and your date of birth, or your social security number and your date of birth. As long as that data checks and is verified on the automated line, it will allow you to hear about your status of your case, or brief information. You have a Medicaid case that is open, and then you'll press 1 again, and it will give you additional information. If there's two people on the case, it will give you both individuals. It will tell you the person's name, it will tell you your coverage dates, and it will tell you if they received the renewal and if the renewal is being processed. If the renewal has been processed, it will tell you if the case is closed. It will tell you if the person has a spend down, or it will tell you if you have full Medicaid that provides you access to all the services. You don't have to wait to speak to a person. This is truly an automated line. You're going to take that information and be about 85 to 90% sure that it is correct. But if it says that they've received the renewal, then they have in fact received the renewal. And how they know that is the envelope along with the packet that the person receives. So that's why you should never use anyone else's packet but your own, has barcodes on it. When they scan it in, the computer recognizes it as being received. And that's the information that will relay to the automated line. Next slide. So we have had instances where the individual who calls says, I don't know what I did with my renewal, or I never received that, I don't know what you're talking about. So in New York City HRA, you can get a copy of your renewal. Next slide. By going through your Access HRA website. If the person is contacting you prior to the due date, then you would go into Access HRA, scroll all the way down. You don't have to go into their account just yet. You would hit Print Medicaid Form. Once you've done that, it'll prompt you to log into the person's account or to create the account. It will you'll do the date of birth, the social security number, and the case fields, and then net. And then what will happen is you will click renewal form button, and the renewal form will be able to be printed and can be mailed in by the due date. Next slide. If the person says, I don't know what I did with my renewal, and they received a notice of intent for disco for failure to renew, or they say, oh yeah, that was due yesterday and I ripped it up. You can go on to Access HRA and reprint the Medicaid renewal after the due date. You just do it in a different way. You would log into the client's account, which is to log in is on the upper right corner. Once you've put that in, once you've put the social security number and the case number in and the data matches, the person's case will automatically appear on the screen. You will then go to print e-notice. There's no print in there to say reprint the Medicaid renewal because it's past the due date. However, it is saved in e-notices. So if the individual did receive a renewal, it can be found there. You click on the top ribbon and then you find the Medicaid renewal and you print and you click on print and a renewal will be there. You will then follow our instructions on how to complete it. And then you will mail it into the P.O. Box 32090, just like we recommended. And that would be certified return receipt requested because you don't, and only one method of mailing it in because you do not have a business reply envelope to submit it. Next slide. I'm now going to hand it over to Rebecca.
That's right. Thank you, Kelly. If you want to come off mute though, quickly, Kelly, there were a few questions that came in during that very informative part of the presentation that I could just raise to you right now. That's all right, your camera's still off.
Oh. Sorry.
No problem. So someone asked, can all clients use Access HRA to renew on Medicaid, or are there some exclusions?
As far as I know, if they're a New York City resident, then you can use Access HRA to get to your account.
And what should someone do if they lost the business return envelope?
So if you lost the business return envelope, you would mail in your packet, return receipt requested to the PO Box 32090. I might be missing a zero. But it's in our presentation. It's on our account on our website in our article of exactly where to mail it. That is where all renewals in New York City should be mailed back to.
And here's a good question about whether on Access HRA, there's a way to make a note of special budgeting, for example, DAC. And I don't believe that there is. Do you agree
There
with me,
is
Kelly?
not. However, what we recommend is if you're uploading an income document, you upload a cover letter with the income document that explains that you would like DAC budgeting.
So to make that, to say that again, our
Sure.
workaround.
So when you're on Access HRA, they don't ask about any special budgeting. So no spousal impoverishment, no spousal refusal, nothing in regards to DAC. However, they are going to ask for proof of income or proof of resources. So with either one of those, you would also upload in that particular category a cover letter. And on the cover letter, you would explain what special budgeting you want. And if there's a form that needs to go with it, you would include it in there. So we just use that category for what they asked for, but we also include other documents so that we hope that they understand what we're requesting. Just so you know, if it is a DAC budget, HRA's computer doesn't recognize it on an annual basis, so there's no way for the worker to know. So that's why you want to do a cover letter.
Thank you, Kelly. Lots of good questions from participants, so keep them coming. We'll do our best to answer them during the presentation or if we have time at the end. So what happens when your client misses the deadline to submit the renewal? What should they do? What's our advice? And I'm just click here. All right. So our advice is to submit the renewal as soon as possible by following our best practices. So that means, and we have the same slide on the next page, that you would mail it back in the business return envelope. You would mail it, return receipt, and you would keep a copy for your records, making a note of when you submitted it. And because we were just talking about Access HRA, it's important to know that after the deadline, a consumer cannot submit a renewal via Access HRA. So you are going to need to mail it in following our best practices. Depending on the circumstances, in addition to the mailing, the consumer or you might go and submit the renewal directly to an HRA worker at the Brooklyn Medicaid office or at a local community office. It's really going to depend on the circumstances. You're going to want to make sure that the renewal is mailed in following our best practices, and then consider whether to take this action in addition. If it makes sense to take action in addition and to go in person, then you must get proof of receipt. So this is where the HRA worker actually stamps that they received the renewal that day. And you're going to want that for the records. And at the same time, once you know that the deadline has passed, your sort of spidey feelers should be going up to to think about, is this client's case going to close? Because now we're past the deadline, they failed to comply, we're doing our best to comply now, but are they going to get an NOI, a notice of intent to discontinue? And how do we prepare them for that? And the main way to prepare them for that is to make sure that they're checking the mail and that they're in touch with you. Someone's just asking, under what circumstances might you want to drop off the renewal? I think if it's extremely urgent and you have a family that has the capacity to do this, you might, and it's urgent to keep the Medicaid open and active, you might go to the Brooklyn Medicaid office to keep it open. I can't guarantee that it's going to be processed more quickly by going into the office versus mailing it in. But sometimes when it's an issue, when access to medical care is very urgent, as it is for many of our clients, you're going to do the advocacy approach of throwing everything at the wall and trying to find out what's going to keep the case open and active the longest. So here's a reminder of our best practices for submission. So again, that business reply mail envelope, sending the packet back through the envelope provided by HRA. Second, sending it back, certified return receipt, keeping a copy for your records, and potentially dropping it off with HRAs, with HRA directly getting that stamped receipt. Another really important piece here for every advocate on this line is to really hold every DSS across the state and HRA to account to enforce the late renewal policy that the Department of Health made very clear in July of this year. And so we do have very consumer centric late renewal policies in place that are new after that. And so here I'm putting up a section of the GIST 25 MA06, and when everyone gets a copy of these slides, they'll be able to click on that link and read this guidance directly. And this part of the GIST directs that if an individual's eligibility is discontinued in the renewal process, so if someone's Medicaid case is closed during the renewal process for failure to renew, and then that individual returns a completed renewal to the district prior to the case expiration, and I'll explain what that means, or within 90 days of the case closure for failure to renew, districts must, and I underline this words, use the returned renewal to reopen the closed case by either reactivation or re-registering the renewal and processing it. So the big takeaway from this is that if your client has a late renewal or returns their renewal after the deadline, that renewal document must be processed by the DSS if it is within 90 days of the case closing. The DSS cannot hand you a full application that includes a supplement A and requires a lot of additional paperwork for our clients to track down. The DSS must instead use the renewal and process the renewal to reactivate the case if it's within that time frame. And this is new, and we all need to make sure that our departments of social services and HRA are following this directive from the Department of Health. And it's very clear, it's really great language for our clients. It says, if determined eligible, coverage may be authorized back to the effective date of the discontinuance. So that means that there should be no gap in coverage for our clients in this situation. So let me do my best to explain what this 30-day grace period is. So there's always been, and I will speak for New York City specifically because that's where our practice is, a little bit of cushion built into the renewal process in New York City. So if the renewal was due October 10th and HRA didn't receive it, and then notice of intent to close the case comes out, let's say, on October 19th, with an effective date of closing the case on let's say November 3rd. If the client, even before the unwind, got the renewal back to HRA between, November 3rd and the end of November, the HRA was able to process that in that 30-day, that renewal in that 30-day grace period and keep the coverage up without closing the case. And so we have a link here at the bottom of the slide to a Medicaid application that discusses this 30-day renewal grace period. That is still in effect, and you see how it's referenced. The 30 days are referenced in the gist that I just reviewed. So we have that grace period in that 30-day window, but then 90 days after the case closes, if the renewal comes back to the district, they need to process the renewal paperwork without a new application and determine your client's eligibility. So this is a great thing to share with your colleagues. It's a new rule, and we're all out here raising awareness about it and making sure our districts follow. Okay. So now this whole process has not gone as planned, and our client receives a notice of intent to discontinue. We've referenced this word a lot in this presentation. So what are we talking about? This is an example of the notice of intent to discontinue. It has a lot of important information on the first and second page, but of course, really you're going to want to look through a lot of the pages, but here's just the first page. And this document at the top, in the top box, it says date. And here we have September 19, 2019, a lifetime ago. That is the date that the notice was hopefully sent. And then in the box below, it says, we will discontinue your Medicaid effective October 2nd, 2019. So that's at least 10 days in advance. That's what the law says. It's giving the consumer at least 10 days of advance notice that their case is going to close. And the notice also has to tell you why. And here we have it in this rectangle at the bottom, the reason. We are discontinuing Medicaid because you or your representative did not return the recertification form by September 10, 2019, by the deadline. So this notice gives us a lot of information about what is going to happen and what the agency thinks happened with the case. It also tells all of us at the top that you may request a fair hearing if you disagree with any decision here. And that's really important. It's required to share that. And the fair hearings are a really important place for our clients to vindicate their rights. So when our clients get notices like this, what do we do? Here's the first step. Request a fair hearing. This is an urgent situation, and if we don't take action before the effective date on the NOI on that notice, the case will close. But if we can act before the effective date of that discontinuance, then we can prevent the Medicaid case closure because we get something called aid to continue. And aid to continue keeps a Medicaid case open and active until there's a decision by the ALJ on whether the agency's action was correct. So acting quickly to request that fair hearing makes a huge, huge difference for our clients. And so when you see those notices, that's what I encourage everyone to think about. Do I need to request a fair hearing? How do we keep this Medicaid case open? The state agency, the Office of Temporary Disability Administration, or OTDA or OTDA, oversees our fair hearing procedures, our fair hearing operations for Medicaid, SNAP, PA, HEAP, etc. There's a huge backlog at OTDA, even with processing fax and online requests. And for that reason, we highly and strongly recommend that you take a moment and request the fair hearing over the phone, calling the number here, 1-800-342-3334. Sometimes there's a wait. Sometimes there's a shorter wait, but staying on the line to make this request with your client, or if your client can make the request and you trust them that they're going to do that in their best interest, makes a huge difference. On that phone call, the OTDA worker will give you a fair hearing number, which you should record in your notes. And they will also verbally confirm to you that the aid to continue order has been issued. And that order goes from Office of Temporary Disability Administration, and it's sent to the Departments of Social Services, I think every night, to make sure that the cases stay open and active. But there are other methods to request a fair hearing: fax, online, by mail. Really, when we're looking at somebody having the risk of a case closing for failure to recertify, and we know that we're familiar with the facts and that the client remains eligible, get on the phone to request that fair hearing, because that's going to get the aid to continue order out to the DSS as quickly as possible and have the best chance of keeping the case open so that our clients don't lose their health care. I've mentioned all of this already, but really that effective date of a reduction or discontinuance on the notice is the most important date that you'll encounter in Medicaid work, because you have to act so quickly to get the aid to continue. You have to act before the effective date of the disco or the reduction in order to be eligible for aid to continue. And you see, we have a little note because it's Medicaid. Right now, we have a slightly different rule, but it's only through December 31st, and I will review that on the next slide. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page about aid continuing, aid to continue. Sometimes people call it AC or ATC. What is it? It is when it is a way to keep medical assistance benefits and your Medicaid case open and active pending the fair hearing decision. It gives our clients the ability to tell their side of the story before their benefits are taken away. Remember, the deadline to request a fair hearing overall, the statute of limitations on a notice, is 60 days from the date of the notice, but you can't wait that long when you're in the face of a reduction or discontinuance, where we have this amazing due process benefit of aid to continue. All right, so put on your, unwind hat for a second. We do have a special rule. When it comes to aid to continue, it is only in effect for a little bit longer through December 31st, 2025. So this fair hearing waiver, it applies to OTDA hearings only. There are Medicaid fair hearings on the New York State of Health. And what it does is that it allows a consumer to request aid continuing even after the effective date of the discontinuance. So if the client gets to you late and their case is closed, right now, through the end of December, they're still entitled to aid to continue. It's a huge benefit to our clients. Another important part of this waiver is that any aid to continue is not subject to recoupment by the county, even if the agency action is sustained. So consumers have special protections about recoupment through December 31st, 2025. And in exchange for these consumer-friendly parts of the waiver, CMS pauses the 90-day deadline by which every ALJ should have decided a Medicaid case with a final administrative decision. But just as there are backlogs in requesting fair hearings, there's backlogs in the issuance of decisions. If you want to read more about this waiver, again, it's temporary. It's only in effect through December 31st of this year. You can go to that same GIS with the late renewal policy, and we have a link to it on this slide. Again, an advocacy tip. Please, 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 and this applies to when the renewal is going to come and every aspect of what we're looking at right now. Encourage your clients to check the mail and to keep their envelopes. Why do we want clients to keep their envelopes? Because the postmark date establishes timeliness. Did our clients actually get at least 10 days notice from receipt of the envelope before their case is at risk of being closed? And if we can show that they didn't get enough notice, then we can overturn in a fair hearing the action by the agency to close the case for failure to recertify. Similarly, if your client didn't get notice that their case closed, that violates the due process rules when it comes to accessing and maintaining Medicaid benefits. In that case, and we should probably add a slide to this, the first step is to request a fair hearing for a discontinuance without notice. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to Kelly to jump in on fair hearing. The fair hearings requested. Now what do you do?
But before you go, I have some questions that were put in the Q&A.
All right.
So, how soon after the fair hearing is requested via telephone will aid to continue order be issued? And how is it issued?
Okay, I will explain to you what I generally understand. The aid to if you request the fair hearing over the phone, the action of putting that into the system generates the order for aid to continue. My understanding is that those are transmitted to the DSS like at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. the next day. How your DSS processes those is another question. There's 58 counties in New York, 57 or 58, and each is going to have a separate process for doing it. If your county fails to put up aid to continue, you should call the OTDA number again, and they can do something called a redirect, where they send that order to the DSS for another time, another time, hopefully comply with it that time.
I have one more question. Are there ever instances when requesting a fair hearing is not in the client's best interest? They've heard stories folks were told by HRA reps that requesting a fair hearing will actually delay the renewal.
This is an advanced question, and it's going to be based on the circumstances of the specific case. I don't want to, in general, the best action is to request the fair hearing for the aid to continue order. Each of us on this webinar maybe have different relationships with the DSS. And DSS workers could be working on a case at the same time that an aid to continue order comes in. But I think and that could be what this writer is referring to as an issue. However, our clients need their benefits and they need their cases open, and the procedure by which we can ensure that is by requesting a fair hearing. So I feel comfortable saying that almost every time the right action is going to be to request a fair hearing and to request aid to continue. And I think Kelly's going to touch on this in the next section, but could the issue be resolved before the fair hearing? Absolutely. And it's simple. All you have to do at that point, once you have the right notices and the clients confirm that the case is open and active, is to withdraw that fair hearing. So not almost every time requesting the fair hearing, it's going to be the right advice. Is my answer to that question, Kelly.
Thanks.
All right.
So we've requested the fair hearing. The best way to do that, not necessarily the quickest way in that you might be sitting on hold for a little bit, is to do it via telephone. You'll get a fair hearing number, and they will confirm that aid to continue is being ordered. So now, what now? Next slide. So a person can represent themselves at a hearing. They can appoint someone to represent them. They would just need an appointment rep from the appointment letter saying, I hereby authorize my daughter to represent, or they can find legal services to assist with the hearing. Just so you know, there are legal services throughout New York State. So you can, on the actual notice of intent to discontinue, it will, within page 5 or 6, tell you where your local legal services can be contacted at, or you can look up Law Help New York, which will provide you with all legal services that provide assistance with benefits union, public benefits issues. You just click the right tabs and it will get you, you put in your zip code and that will tell you what legal services are available. Next slide. While you're waiting to hear back from legal services, or if you're going to represent yourself or the person has appointed someone to represent them, you want to be able to get all your documents together. So that's where, when I told you I'm paranoid and we do it in 3 ways, these would be the documents you're looking for. Do you have a copy of the renewal that was sent? Do you have a copy of all the documents that were sent with it? Do you have any proof of interactions with your local Department of Social Services or HRA in regards to your eligibility? And then you're going to look through, is the client actually eligible? Are they income eligible? Are they resource eligible? Did they provide the necessary forms? And then you want to look at the notices. Are they timely? Are they adequate? There are specific information about what is timely and what is adequate in the regulations. Next slide. So once you've gotten everything together and you've reviewed it and you're like, okay, I believe that this is an incorrect discontinuation. 1, I did mail it. Here's my proof of mailing. 2, I am eligible. Here's my proof of income and my resources. And I submitted all that. This is not correct. You're going to want to reach out to HRA or the local Department of Social Services that has a fair hearing liaison. You say to them, hey, I have this. I submitted all this. Can we please resolve this issue without the fair hearing being necessary? Just remember you have aid to continue in place. That aid to continue is going to keep the coverage going in place until a decision is made by the hearing office. Now, your local Department of Social Services or HRA may say to you, okay, I'll review it. And then all of a sudden you miraculously get a notice from the hearing office that says you requested a fair hearing and the issues have all been resolved. And it will tell you that your local Department of Social Services has reviewed it and the client's Medicaid case has been continuing and will continue as is. And then the hearing is no longer on the books and the person's coverage is not through aid to continue. You do not have to do anything for that hearing. I would recommend that you do request a coverage notice from either HRA if they haven't already sent that, and you can request that through Access HRA or via the automated line, or you reach out to your local Department of Social Service to ask for your coverage determination. Or HRA or the local Department of Social Services may contact you directly and say, oh, I reviewed all this, you're correct, the person's coverage is in place, we've updated it, and here's a notice that says so. Or here's screenshots that show that the coverage, the effective date, the case is coded correctly, and all that information. If you're not getting a pre-hearing disposition, but instead another communication from HRA or local Department of Social Services, and you have confirmed with the client that they've gone to the doctor and their Medicaid is in place, then you would just fax in a request to withdraw the fair hearing. We fax it in using the form that's through the Fair Hearing OTDA website, and we upload all the proof that we are given by HRA, the local Department of Social Services, and within the request to withdraw, we do ask that we have requesting the right to reopen if this matter is not settled as the Department of Social Services or HRA has indicated. Once again, you just want to make sure that the client does have a notice if you're getting a hearing disposition, or if they communicate to you the issue has been resolved, and getting a copy of the notices is somewhat easier at HRA using Access HRA. Next slide. So when the client does get a notice, you need to make sure that the client's notice is actually correct. Next slide. So when you're looking at it, Rebecca went through page 1. She told you if there's coverage. If it's discontinued, it will tell you if you have coverage. It will tell you if you have coverage for, and all the services that you have coverage for. And then it will tell you on page 2 the actual coverage date. So is the coverage date for the 12 months that you need it to be done? It will say how many people are in the case. So if you are a household the size of 2 and it only says 1, that might be an issue. You're then going to go through to make sure that the budget is correct. Usually on page 1, it will tell you your countable income is this. And then on page 2, it breaks it out. You want to make sure that all your income is there. You want to make sure that any of your disregards are there. You want to make sure that your resources are properly listed. If they're not properly listed, I recommend that you do reach out to HRA with the 751W. Even if you're eligible, just so it's corrected, you don't want them to come back. If the budget is not correct and you're not deemed not eligible, then you will going to want to request a fair hearing for an improper budget. Next slide. So if the notice is wrong, you're going to request a hearing. If there was a reduction or a discontinuing of services because the budget is not correct, you're going to request aid to continue. And once again, remind the clients that they need to check their mail. It's very important that you check your mail. It's very important that you keep the envelopes along with the documents, and that is what is provided to anyone who's assisting you with the hearing. Next slide. So we know that we've given you a lot of information. So our key tip is keep calm, take a deep breath. Don't delay in completing and submitting your renewal packet. Do it as quickly as possible. Submit it back in the return receipt requested business reply. Submit it back in the business reply envelope that they've provided. Use the form that they've provided. Don't use someone else's form. Keep copies of everything that was submitted. I would submit it a second way, return receipt requested, keep all that information, keep notes of how everything was mailed, and then remind your clients or yourself to check your mail regularly. Keep any envelopes and documents that you have. And if you get a discontinuation notice, you should act as quickly as possible to request the fair hearing. And that you remember that your automatic aid to continue will only end as of December 31st. Will end after that, it must be requested before the effective date or 10 days after the notice is received. So now I'm going to pass it over to Rachel. Rachel's going to talk about some new and exciting news. I'm going to move into the 21st century in regards to non-MAGI Medicaid. And I'm handing it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, so I'm going to just talk briefly about a change that's happening in New York State right now for non-MAGI Medicaid. That means people who have Medicaid because they are older adults or they have disabilities. This just relates to applications and renewals. I am not talking about services, requesting services. This is just Medicaid applications and renewals, which is why we're talking about it in this webinar. If you've never heard about this before, that's okay. It's brand new in New York State, and we're going to host an entire webinar just on this change on December 17th, and there'll be more information on how to register in the future slides. Next slide. So this new system, I'm going to call it MECM, but that stands for the Medicaid Eligibility and Client Management System. The system is a back-end eligibility system. Some of you may have heard of something called WMS. This is sort of like WMS. It's a computer system that's figuring out who is eligible for Medicaid. It's going to be integrated into the website called NISO, the New York State of Health. So some clients may not even realize that they're in this new MECM system, but we want to make sure that families, social workers, advocates know about this change because it will affect our clients who have non-MAGI Medicaid. So this is a multi-year project. It's actually been already ongoing for 2 years, even though it's just now starting to go live. So the project is from 2023 to 2032, and it's to migrate these non-MAGI Medicaid eligibility cases from the local districts, that's LDSS, the local districts of social services, or HRA, which currently use the system called WMS, onto the NISO website, which is going to be hosting this new eligibility platform called MECM. And New York has contracted with Deloitte to develop the system. Next slide. So just as a refresher, New York has 2 eligibility systems. The first is called the New York State of Health. This is a newer system. Anybody, if you want, if you've never seen the website, you can Google New York State of Health and you can look at it. But then we have a second eligibility system in New York State, and it's called the Welfare Management System, or WMS. This is an older system. Sometimes you'll hear it called a legacy system. It was actually developed in the 70s, and it's what's used currently by local departments of social services and HRA in New York City. Next slide. So who's in these systems? So on the left here, we see in terms of who's on the New York State of Health eligibility system, this is for MAGI Medicaid cases. Sometimes you'll hear these called expansion enrollees because of the Affordable Care Act Medicaid expansion. Generally speaking, this is people who are under 65, so children, younger families, etc., and people without Medicare. But then our second system is the welfare management system, and the people on this system are non-MAGI Medicaid cases. So this is who we at FLRP, who we work with. Sometimes you'll hear this called SSI-related cases or age-blind disabled cases. A few other cases are also in the welfare management system, but just for sort of simplicity, it's okay to think about it as people who are over 65 and people who have disabilities, even if they're under 65, but they may have a disability and they have Medicare. Those people are on WMS. However, this change is going to bring some of those people from WMS and put them onto this online system called NISO and into this little new eligibility system within NISO called MECM. Next slide. So what are the benefits of MECM? Some, but not all, non-MAGI Medicaid applications and renewals are now going to be available online. And there will still be some paper applications that are available for anyone who would like a paper application. However, it's going to be available online, which is a change. With MECM's updated technology, there's going to be quicker eligibility determinations and also more administrative renewals, which are sometimes called ex parte renewals. Administrative renewals are amazing when they happen well because they happen automatically. So the person doesn't have to do anything. There's no paperwork they have to fill out. The computer system runs the renewal, talks to different data sources that you don't even see, and bing, you're done. The person's Medicaid is renewed. So goodbye to those renewal packets. So when it happens well, this is really great because it reduces the burden on families, individuals, social workers, advocates. So with the updated technology, some people will be able to be administratively renewed. And there's also going to be additional changes that are going to be beneficial to our clients. But really, it's still new. And the official policy guidance is forthcoming. It's not yet been released. Next slide. Excuse me. So just briefly to talk through the timeline, the soft rollout just happened in late September. There's 3 sister groups that are helping, and also the NISO helpline is helping. Non-MAGI recipients who are still on NISO are going to be moved over from sort of the main NISO into this MECM system that's nestled within NISO. December 1st, there's online applications that are going to be available for everyone. So anybody can go onto the website. And if you have a non-MAGI Medicaid application without a surplus and with no long-term services and supports, or for an MSP only application, you'll be able to submit it online. And then starting in February of next year, additional groups of Medicaid applicants and recipients on NISO are going to be transferred to MECM every month. Next slide. So just briefly on these 3 doors that exist for navigating Medicaid applications and renewals. Next slide. So on the left, we have NISO. So this is for MAGI Medicaid. This is what I was explaining before, the sort of expansion population, younger people, people under 65 without Medicare. They still are going to use NISO for their applications and their renewals like they've been doing. Next, we have NISO, but underneath NISO is this new system called MECM, and that's going to be used for non-MAGI Medicaid and for MSP, the Medicare Savings Program. Next. And then our third system, which is the WMS eligibility system that I was just explaining that exists at the local districts, that's also going to still be used for some non-MAGI communities or non-MAGI populations because the change is happening in phases. Next slide. So I know that probably for many of you, you've never heard about this before. Again, it is brand new and it's not yet available to the public. So far, there's only these 3 sister groups in the NISO call center using this new platform. So what we're going to do is NILAC's going to have a full presentation on MECM on December 17th. You can register by going to tinyurl.com/des17MECM. And we'll talk at length more about this and answer more questions. Next slide. So with that, we're going ahead and wrapping up our webinar. We want to make sure that everyone keeps in touch. Please make sure to join our newsletter. The link is on the slide. Also, we do take intake for some individual client cases. You can see the email address for email intake on the slide. And we also have a phone intake hotline that's only open Mondays from 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. And that phone number is also on the slide. But please do not delay in requesting a fair hearing. If you could go ahead and request that fair hearing and then reach out to us. So please don't delay. And lastly, as Kelly mentioned earlier, and as we put into some of the Q&A, if you go to the answered Q&A, you should be able to see this website. There's a website called lawhelpny.org, and you can filter by public benefits and Medicaid, and you can find free legal services organizations in your area who can help.
Thank you all for participating today. We really appreciate it. We will be making this recording public and we will be making the slides. We will be sharing the slides and posting them onto our website on our renewals page that Rachel had posted in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you on December 17th and at future webinars on a variety of topics. So thank you so much and we will see you soon.